Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good Shabbos, dear colleagues. Good Shabbos, dear friends who are
Shalom,
tuning
Shabbat
in.
Shalom.
Let us thank God for the gift of learning Torah together. And then, do we have a treat in store today? Baruch atah
Adonai
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam, asher
asher
kidshanu
kidshanu
b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. V'ha'arevna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu u'b'fi amcha beit Yisrael.
ונהיה אנחנו וצאצאינו וצאצאי עמך בית ישראל, כולנו יודעי שמך ולומדי תורתך לשמה. ברוך אתה אדוני המלמד תורה לעמו ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחרבנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
So this class, I think, is going to be just so very interesting. Here's the basic idea that powers this class. It's an insight that I first heard last summer in July or August from Micha Goodman in his lectures on Deuteronomy. And he said something that just I've held on to ever since, and I was looking for a Talmudic story that operationalized this principle. He talks about the power of subtlety. When you don't hit somebody over the head with your 7-point plan or your 9-point plan or your 11-point plan. And Micha says that often Judaism's deepest truths are in silence, in absence, in something that's unsaid. And his example, which I shared, I'll repeat if you didn't read the Talmud teaser, he talks about how there's a festival for getting out of Egypt, Pesach, and there's a festival for getting the Torah, Shavuot, and there's a festival for wandering in the wilderness, Sukkot. And you would think there should be a fourth festival for getting into the land of Israel, crossing the River Jordan, settling the land in fulfillment of the promises to Abraham. And there isn't. And it's the missing festival. Why isn't that there? And there's so much meaning about that. And that it invites the reader in. It invites the person who is receiving the conversation in what's going on. And it's the power of the unspoken. So what we have for you today, I've been searching for a story where that principle, the power of the unspoken, drives a story, and we have it here. What we have here is a story of a relationship. It's a love story. Clearly, this is a relationship between two men, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan is a seasoned rabbi. He's the mentor. Reish Lakish was a criminal, a highwayman. And somehow becomes the disciple of Rabbi Yochanan. Are they just student-teacher, or is there more going on? That will be for us to discuss. But I do think that the main thing that drives this is what is not said. All the main stuff happens underneath the surface of the story. So without further ado, we'll just... Elisa, will you start reading with one day Rabbi Yochanan was swimming in the Jordan River?
Sure. One day, Rabbi Yochanan was swimming in the Jordan River. Reish Lakish, who was then a highwayman, saw him and jumped into the Jordan after him. Rabbi Yochanan beheld this display of vitality and said to him, "Your strength belongs to Torah." Reish Lakish said to him, "Your beauty belongs to women." Rabbi Yochanan said to him, "If you will repent your ways, I will give you my sister in marriage, who is more beautiful than I." Reish Lakish accepted this upon himself.
Okay, so let's pause so far. First vignette. Right, Rabbi Yochanan is swimming. Reish Lakish jumps in. Rabbi Yochanan says to him, "Wow, you're strong. Belongs to the Torah." And Reish Lakish says, "Wow, you're beautiful." And Rabbi Yochanan says, "You know what? Have I got a sister for you? You give your life to Torah, and my sister will be yours." Okay? And Reish Lakish says, "Yes." Okay? Just pause on that, because then there's something that is very much an enigmatic key to the story, which happens next. Keep going, Elisa.
Reish Lakish then wanted to return to retrieve his clothes, but was unable to muster the strength to do so. Rabbi Yochanan afterwards taught him scripture and Mishnah and made him into a great man.
Okay, so they have this encounter in the water. Then there's some enigmatic thing where Reish Lakish tries to get his clothes, He doesn't have his strength to get his clothes. We'll have to talk about what that means. And then afterwards, they have a session where Rabbi Yochanan teaches him Torah. That's end of Act 1. Okay? Looking for, and throughout this, we will talk about what the traditional kind of modern Orthodox perspective is based on the edition of the Talmud that we're reading, is Schottenstein, which is a modern Orthodox posture. And we'll look at the footnotes to see what they say and what we think. So, anyone want to hazard an interpretation of what is going on with Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish? Lord Dan Nathan.
Well, I mean, first of all, there's weird stuff going on right from the beginning, where a highwayman, a thief, just happens to jump into the river. Why would he do that? Unless he had, something dire in mind, like, for instance, hurting this guy in the river and stealing whatever he has. So that's odd right from the beginning. And then, then the response is, well, wow, you're strong. And then Reish Lakish's response is just so bizarre, right? He says, your beauty belongs to women. It's just such an odd response, especially when you look at if the person has a reputation of being this highwayman, which I'm assuming is a ruffian, person that doesn't have a good reputation. It's a very odd thing for him to say. So there's already an underlying idea that there's something strange going on right from the beginning.
Right.
And then the next thing, as you said, the point that's not said. In other words, why Reish Lakish doesn't have the strength.
Why? Yeah, Reish Lakish, right.
It doesn't have the strength to go and even retrieve his clothes. Obviously, there was some kind of activity that happened, that tired him out.
Right.
Right. So, I don't
Now,
know. I don't know
Some
what
activity.
That.
So let's talk about the
Yeah.
let's talk about the activity that tired him out,
Mm-hmm.
because I just want to read the footnote from number 18, and I'm going to ask if you find this compelling and plausible.
Well, you have to read 17. I'm sorry.
So why does Reish Lakish jump in after Rabbi Yochanan? 17, he mistook him for a woman since he had no beard. Okay,
There
and
you go.
then 18. The Torah tends to weaken the physical strength of its students. Here, even though Reish Lakish had not yet begun his studies, he had nevertheless accepted the yoke of Torah upon himself. This alone made him incapable of leaping as he had done before. Now, Dan, do you find that is what's going on, that he's weakened because he accepts Ol Malchut Shamayim, the yoke of heaven? Is that what's going on? And if not, what is going on?
Well, so I don't find that compelling logically. I understand where the commentary is coming from. The idea that when you come close to Torah, it can be dangerous. We have Nadav and Avihu, right? We have this thing that the idea that whenever you touch the Torah, whenever you that there's an idea like you do Hag ben Galila, that immediately you're supposed to say Yashir Koach so that your strength will return. So I can kind of already feel that very traditional perspective being layered onto this.
That is the reason you are called Lord.
All that. So, okay. So, colleagues, what is going on here? But it sounds like you don't find that entirely compelling.
No,
Okay.
I don't. I find it something they're layering on top of something that's clearly not that.
Right.
That's
right.
my
So
opinion.
what did happen? What is going on?
So, all right. So, several things that we need to bring in consideration. Several things we need to bring in consideration here.
Yes.
When you said we are going to study Talmud, wow, that awakes on us such a powerful desire to learn more. So I spent some time this morning going backwards in the Gemara to learn more about the story of Rabbi Yochanan. And you're probably familiar with this because you are all scholars, that it says that Rabbi Yochanan was very much interested in women, and he would dressed up nicely, and he would go to the door of the mikveh, waiting for women to come out to do some stuff and to, maybe to give them kids and stuff like that to continue the generations and inspire them. So clearly, and then they spend a lot of time talking about the beauty of Rabbi Yochanan. Actually, I invite you to go back, and they talk about specifically rabbis debating about his beauty, that he didn't have a beard. Anyways, so
Your point.
My point is that your original question in the teaser could be that they had a great relationship, but in that case makes Rabbi Yochanan bisexual, not gay.
Okay.
Or it makes him trying to pass in a world that did not accept homosexual relationships, and so he had to publicly advertise, like he had to broadcast his interest in women as a cover for
Right.
his true desires. And there's also something I think really interesting.
Wait, where do you read this?
So I read this in the sense that we all know people or know stories of people who grew up in previous generations where it wasn't socially acceptable to be gay. And so often they would end up getting married and have, great marriages or not so great marriages where they put up a public face that I have a gender identity, I have a sexual orientation that is different from my own. I have a show that I put on for the world, and that enables me to pass, to get by in the world, to keep my job, to keep my home, right? Back when being gay meant that you could legally be discriminated against, meant that you could legally be evicted.
No, I get it, but I don't see it in this story.
Oh,
Why
just
not?
hold on. You will.
So I
Okay.
think
Keep going, Elisa.
I think there's also, right, if that's his game, and if his goal is to pass in a world where being a rabbi means you have to be in a relationship with a woman, that you have to be procreating, that it's a mitzvah to have children, there's no other way to do that. There's also something really interesting about where we find him, because we find him naked in water, like he's swimming in the river, which is just a weird place to find a rat. Like, and he's not just like, it's not that he's there for a ritual purpose. He's like going on a swim. He's chilling. He's open to this. And
what was he doing there, Elisa? Rabbi Yochanan, before Rish Lakish came into the picture, what's he doing swimming nude in a river?
So I think being in the River Jordan is particularly significant because he is sort of, so to speak, crossing boundaries. He is sort of able to go between worlds, and he is in that in between space. And I think, Elias, that your comment about him being potentially bi, or like him maybe having a gender identity that doesn't fit neatly on one side or the other, and so he's in this in between space, and he sees Reish Lakish, and there's also this thing about Reish Lakish. Dan, I really loved what you pointed out about him, and that he is a highwayman. He's strong, he's buff, he's macho. Like, he's like the hero where you hear like the Western music roll in, and he comes in with his guns, and he's like, "Hey guys, I'm here."
Nice deep voice.
Thank you. So he comes in, and he's also got his own, right? Like, maybe Reish Lakish is passing in his own way by being a highwayman. Maybe he passes in the world by his vocation, and there's something about the two of them coming together and meeting and sort of calling each other's bluff
In this liminal space.
in this liminal space.
Can I say
Wow.
something that is very important here,
Yeah.
at least to me? You may be surprised to hear that I didn't grow up here in America because of my perfect accent, and we talk about that so many times. But speaking about cultures and
Yes.
speaking about how our upbringing and the ways we are shaped by culture relates in how we see a story. Where I come from, and in many European countries, it's so common from men to give each other compliments and to say to each other, "Oh, you're so handsome." You know, it's so common, and that doesn't mean that will describe your sexual orientation.
Okay.
Okay.
I want to hear Michelle's voice. Michelle.
So there's so much that I've been taking in here because I don't understand your vested interest in trying to say that the idea of bisexuality is not a possibility. Like, why not? Right? I think that, yeah. So B, I don't know that that's the most interesting thing about this story. Like, I actually think I get why for modern people this is just a revolutionary story, and it's so meaningful, especially for gay men, for lesbians. I would argue for bisexuals as well. Like, this is a story where they can see themselves, and so it's a modern move to be able to say, "Look here, Torah represents you too. You can find yourself here," and that's beautiful. And I don't want to undermine that move. And yet, I don't think it's the most interesting thing about this story. I think it's this story.
What is the most interesting thing? From your
So
point of view?
just picking up on what Elias was saying, I think this story is about a male friendship. Like there are some ways. So I'm raising 2 boys, and there are some ways in which the idea of sensitivity, of like noticing about somebody else something that might feel a little like scary or it would have sexual connotations, so you can't say it. The idea that, you know, they should be loved and hugged and treated in a sensitive manner and should be able to have friends that they deeply, deeply love is so, it's so not supported by our American culture in such a way that you say, like, here's this profound male friendship, and our instinct is to say, oh no, that has to be a gay relationship.
But Michelle. I'm all in favor of friendship and male friendships, etc. But since you're a rabbi and we want to actually read the text, when the text goes out of its way to say that Reish Lakish wanted to return to retrieve his clothes but was unable to muster the strength to do so.
Yeah,
and then afterwards he learned.
And I see all the innuendo. I see all the innuendo there, of course. Although I do have to say,
that's not a small point. That's like, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you like the show? Like, that's a driver. So address the driver.
But wait a minute. What
address the driver?
Okay, so I'll address the driver. What if this is, as in classic rabbinic thought, a tshuva moment, like the sense that, oh my God, I've been living my life wrong. I've come across somebody who perhaps at first I was jumping into the water because, like, oh, I thought it was a beautiful woman, I'm going to jump in there. Or perhaps not, whatever. But whatever the carnal instinct that Reish Lakish had that was driving him, no matter which gender it was directed at, something about his encounter with Rabbi Yochanan gave him the opportunity and the sense to look at himself again, and maybe he has the wind knocked out of him. Yes, I get the innuendo. And by the way, for everybody who's listening, I think it's actually a beautiful thing to read this through the eyes of a gay or bisexual love story. I actually think that's an important move that we're doing in the modern world. But I don't want to lose the equally important move that there's something that he encounters in that water that causes him to look at himself in a way that he thinks, oh my God, like I'm not a good guy. I haven't been living my life in the right way. And I've encountered somebody who's challenged me, who's making me, and I can't go back to get my clothes because guess what? Those clothes, clothes of a brigand don't fit me anymore.
But Michelle,
thank you, Michelle, for all these beautiful words.
Yeah,
thank you.
Michelle.
Wes, I need to ask you a question because you always ask the questions.
Yes, I want to, why isn't that an and? Why isn't it that they were, like it was a love at first sight, and not only was it physically very satisfying, but it was emotionally and spiritually completely uplifting, and that Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan had this encounter, had this moment physically, and had this encounter, had this moment spiritually. Why isn't it an and?
Because I think
it's an and.
So I actually do think it is an and, but I think it's an and in 2 different reads of a story. Not an and in that because they're gay, that's why this happened. Perhaps. Right? Yes, our tradition is so rich and beautiful in that we can hold multiple interpretations.
Right.
I don't want to lose the interpretation that this is actually not sexual, but it is spiritual and it is connective and it is about a profound male friendship that can be a role model for not only gay and bisexual people, but also for any sexuality, because it's not about sex. It's about spirituality and friendship.
No, it's about spirituality and friendship and sex. That's the combination. And it's an and. It's an and. What they have a torrid affair on the shore, and then they learn together. It's both.
So I think
wait.
No, I was first.
I just want to say one thing. I never do this. I just want to say,
you're pulling at me.
I am. What I hear you saying, Michelle, is that the text is very clear to be ambiguous. It's very clear not to explicitly, and we have words and we have ways in which our rabbinic texts especially mention sex explicitly without mentioning it explicitly, like came to each other or knew each other or saw each other. And the text is very careful not to say any of that. And so what I hear you saying is that you want to preserve the ambiguity because within that ambiguity grows more meaning. And I can join with you in that. Like I'm not invested necessarily them being bi or not being bi or being, I see both of those possibilities.
Elias,
Wes, the question is for you. I'm going to corner you here.
please.
So now the question is the following. The thing is the following. So, do you believe that in the 4th or the 5th or the 6th century, whatever this was written,
Yeah.
that the sages or the rabbis who wrote this story and decided to purposely include it in the Talmud, was it because they want to make a reference of a gay relationship?
Yeah, so we have to talk about that. Like, what's this doing in the Talmud is a very important question, Elias. I mean, I taught this to Sisterhood on Tuesday morning.
What's your take on this?
Oh, I think that they knew exactly what they were doing, and they included it because of the obvious gay resonance. You're going to see. So the answer is yes, and I'll come to that at the end. Let me just frame the next piece of this, right? The next piece is a story about when do different things contract ritual impurity? When do they become ritually impure? And you will note that all these things have something in common. So, Lord Dan Nesson, would you read this? The narrative continues. One day, many years later. If you'll read that. Hey, Dan, you got to use the microphone.
There we go.
And loud in the
Yes.
microphone, Dan.
Okay. The narrative continues. One day, many years later, they were disputing the following point in the study hall. The Mishnah states the sword and the knife and the hunting spear and the military spear and the hand sickle and the harvesting sickle, from what point are they capable of becoming tameh? It is from the time of the completion. It is from the time of the completion of their production. And when is the completion of their production? Rabbi Yochanan says, from when the metal utensils are tempered in a furnace. Resh Lakish says, from when they are polished with water.
Okay, let's just pause here. Okay, now I've been marinating on this, for a long time, and I just had kind of a breakthrough insight. But what's obvious about all the items that they ask about?
Well, they're obviously phallic.
They're all phallic. They're all phallic, right? So the question is, when do all of these phallic symbols become impure? Right? When do all these phallic symbols become impure? And then
Wow, Rabbi Gardner Schwartz. My God.
No,
Call
no,
a
no, no,
kavod
but-
to you.
Yeah. and then the question is, so Rabbi Yochanan says when they're hot, and Reish Lakish says when they're cold. Right? Rabbi Yochanan says, when do all of these...
Is it hot or cold, or is it fire and water?
Well,
Are we having this conversation?
yeah, we are. We are. When do all these
Welcome back
phallic
to South
symbols...
America.
when are all these phallic symbols tameh? When are they, to use the language, when are they impure? And Rabbi Yochanan says it's when they're hot, I think, which means when you use them. That is to say, I feel kind of guilty about you're married to my sister. You're married to my sister, right? And we find out they have kids. You're married to my sister, right? And when is forbidden relations actionable? When is it tameh? When we're hot, when we use it, right? When it's hot. And Reish Lakish says, no, when they're cold. That is to say, I think Reish Lakish is saying it's not the actual use in relations. It's just feeling it at all. And I think that is the conversation they are having about the tuma of these phallic symbols.
I think there's something about the way in which swords and knives and things are smith that when after they're finished being shaped, they get heated up. And it's a question like if it's in fire, that's actually the process of strengthening the metal and sharpening the metal and making the metal form. And the water is after it's already been formed as it's being cooled down but it's polishing. It's the water of after it's been formed, it's being in the world. And so I think there's also something like, can you become tameh as you are being formed, as your person, as yourself, as you are coming into the world, or do you become tameh like after you're already in the world as you're sort of softening in the world?
So okay, and Michelle, what do you think is underlying this? There's the conversation on the surface about the ritual status of a bunch of instruments. What's going on underneath the surface from your point of view? What is this about? Anyone? What do you think it's about?
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about this.
Okay.
Okay.
So I would say that they're having an argument, but it's couched as a public argument about about ritual stuff, but about 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 their relationship.
Right.
When it's going to be. And I was just thinking about like the hot and the cold. So when it's still when the items are hot, they're still malleable, and when it's only when it's cooled down that it becomes becomes usable, right? So that because in other words, while it's still being made, it's coming out of the furnace. It can still be changed.
Right.
So I think they're talking about changeable relationship.
Yeah.
The changeable relationship is going on here, and of course the idea, when you're talking about before about about maybe Rabbi Yochanan being gay. When you were talking about, I read those same texts, and I was looking. He seems like he was physically effeminate. So it was, so they may have had something to do with that if he was always thought it was
Yeah.
beautiful. And the other thing I was like, Elisa, I want to talk about what you were saying before about, people hiding in plain sight. I always think about the person that I grew up with, as Bruce Jenner, right? Who then is like totally different, So I'm just thinking about the idea that we become different people. In this relation, the idea of relationships, we become different people when or allow ourselves to become the people that we are in different ways. Sometimes it's in the moment of the heat of passion, and sometimes it's in the moment of the relationship has cooled down, and now we can see it for what it is. So I think you have two different.
And we're
things
also
going on
not
there.
formed by ourselves. We're formed by the instruments or like the context that we're in.
So Dan, can you finish reading this piece of the story, because it goes from this discussion, at whatever level, if you want to read it as a technical, dry halachic discussion about tuma or something deeper, but then it goes personal and it goes downhill. So if you'll pick it up, Dan, with your microphone. Rabbi Yochanan said to Resh Lakish, a thief.
Rabbi Yochanan said to Resh Lakish, "A thief knows the tools of his thievery." Resh Lakish replied to him, "And how have you benefited me? There among the thieves they called me Rabbi. I was their leader. And here they call me Rabbi." Rabbi Yochanan said to him, "I benefited you in that I brought you under the wings of the divine presence."
Okay, so, and we're going to see in the end that this conversation has a profound impact on both Resh Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. But this is a breaking moment. Something about this conversation breaks the heart, actually, of both of them. What is it that breaks the heart of both of them, and why does it go so downhill so fast?
So, I mean, clearly here, Lakish feels offended by the words of Rabbi Yochanan. I think he was very mean to say that to him. The guy is already not a thief. He became a scholar. He's married to his sister. They have kids, and the guy is pulling a joke, like crosses the line completely. Oh, you were a thief, so
Right.
you're
And
an
why
expert.
does he do that? Why does Rabbi Yochanan do that? Why go cruel?
Do you want me to follow your line of thought or my line of thought?
No, I'm just asking.
If I follow your line of thought, he could be jealous that he's married to his sister and he feels sexual attraction to him and he wants to be with him. So this anger makes him do that. Or the other way of looking at this is that the guy, it's a little jealous of what the other guy became. And he's jealous about how smart and intelligent and all that is that. So he's throwing a stone to him.
So I want to just go back to the close, and I really I want to affirm both your read and an alternative read, which is a traditional read. So in the traditional read, if you look at the clothing as he can't retrieve his clothes because the clothes of the robber, the clothes of the thief no longer fit him, that is tshuva gemora. Like that is full tshuva. That is a conversion, as it were. And we're taught that we're not allowed to remind converts of who they were before. And Reish Lakish is a convert. Like he has made for himself a life that is beautiful and filled with Torah and filled with learning. And yet the person who's closest to him can't see him fully. Like can only see what he was and not what he is. And I think that can be part of the rupture in the ways in which we sometimes we hold on to images of the people that we love and that we know, or even that we're just in our orbit of, you will always be that bully from high school. You will always be that person who hurt me in the fight that we had 20 years ago. And I can't let go of that. And that there's some sense in which Reish Lakish says, like, if you're still calling me a thief now, you will never truly get me. Our friendship is irreparably, our friendship, our love, whatever the sexual, whatever's going on here in terms of the bedroom, in the heart, there's some deep rupture in being not seen for who he has truly become.
So, Michelle, will you pick up with the story on the next page? Rabbi Yochanan became disheartened because of Reish Lakish's response.
Rabbi Yochanan became disheartened because of Reish Lakish's response. Reish Lakish became seriously ill. Rabbi Yochanan's sister, who was Reish Lakish's wife, came before Rabbi Yochanan. She cried and pleaded with him to pray for Reish Lakish's recovery. She said, "Act for the sake of my children. Prevent their father from dying." Rabbi Yochanan replied to her with this verse, "Leave your orphans, I will sustain them." She said, "Act for the sake of my impending widowhood." He said to her, "And let your widows trust in me." Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish passed away. But Rabbi Yochanan grieved after him considerably.
Okay, we'll pause right there. Okay, so after this rupture, the thief knows the tools of his thievery. They both kind of crater, and Reish Lakish becomes very ill, and Rabbi Yochanan becomes very sad that Reish Lakish is very ill. And then what happens is really opaque and enigmatic. So first, Reish Lakish's wife, Rabbi Yochanan's sister, asks Rabbi Yochanan to pray for her husband. And obviously the question is, why doesn't she pray to God herself? Right? You know, we're not Catholic, and we're not Hasidim, that the Rebbe has some special power or the Pope has some special power. Judaism teaches we all have equal access to God. Why doesn't she just say, "God, heal my husband"? Why does she have to go through her brother? And second, why is Rabbi Yochanan such a grade A jerk? Such a grade A jerk that her husband is dying. I'm worried that my kids aren't going to have a father. And he quotes some pasuk about God takes care of orphans. And I'm actually worried that I'm going to be a widow, and Rabbi Yochanan is a grade A jerk and quotes some verse about God will take care of widows too. That's just horrible. What a hateful, horrible. This is definitely Rabbi Yochanan's worst moment as a human, to do that to his sister. So why can't she pray herself? And why is he such a jerk?
So I think she can pray herself, but I think that she recognizes that her husband's illness is partially due to Rabbi Yochanan's behavior and the breach that they've had. And what she's saying is, if you step up and pray for him, then he will feel better because he knows that on some level the breach is not complete.
Dad, in that read, when she says to, by the way, note she doesn't have a name, by the way, sadly. Right? When Mrs. Lakish says, "Pray for my husband," does she mean, Shachris Mincha Ma'ariv in the Ghent Chapel, or does she mean something else?
No, I think she means something else. I think she means that she's inviting him to come to Reish Lakish and say, I apologize. I did wrong. This whole thing is wrong. And, and I'm going to, and that we need to, I can fix this by being there for you. I think that's kind of the gesture that's being made.
Or being asked for.
Asked for, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then with that interpretation, why does Rabbi Yochanan say no in such a horrible way?
That I'm not sure about. I agree with you that he's just acting like a jerk. Maybe he's just still so jealous of the fact that or maybe he can't forgive himself for what he's done, and so therefore retreats into a place where he has to push everybody away, his sister, right. his friend, the rest of society, really.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you in the first thing that you said. I think that what she's saying here is, you caused this. Go and fix it. Pray. At least the only thing you can do now is pray for him, because you caused this. And you brought up his past, and you offended him.
And the fact that he can't or won't or doesn't.
I mean, one more thing I want to add,
yeah.
that we've seen in life how many times, ourselves or relatives or friends get into fights with loved ones, and they escalated and escalated and escalated. Instead of bring them closer, they separate more and more, and strain siblings or strain, father and son. Or how many times we've seen that, and then it becomes a matter of pride. I'm not the one who did anything wrong
Right.
here. So obviously, Rabbi Yochanan, it's also upset with the situation. And also, one thing to add is that, if we take in consideration what happened before, that everybody was talking about his beauty and how beautiful he was and everything, the guy could be a little bit full of himself. Like saying, I'm so good, I'm very handsome, and I'm a scholar, and I made you. Now you get upset because of a joke? You come and apologize to me.
So, okay, so here's my question. What's at the heart of this? What's at the heart of this?
Well, so since everybody's thinking, I think that it talks about the intensity of a relationship, both good and bad, the love and the hate.
So I think I'm sort of stuck with this hate. I'm not sure that I see the hate. I think I see brokenness on both sides, and I think that I see, if we're going with the read that Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan were in love and were, in a different time, in a different place, would have been together and would have lived together and would have loved together and would have deepened their friendship and relationship and love. But instead of being able to do that in public, and instead of being able to be their full selves, they had to hide. And Rabbi Yochanan had to use his sister in order to gain access to Reish Lakish and to set up a paradigm in which he had a reason to visit a lot and a reason to be in the midst a lot. If we're reading into that paradigm, then it's just awful. And Rabbi Yochanan is watching his beloved die, and he can't do anything, and he can't be real, and he can't be honest, and he can't mourn in the way that he would want to mourn, and he can't be in public spaces doing the public rituals. And so he is just beside himself in despair. And so his sister comes and says, it's all about me. It's my relationship. I'm losing my husband, and my children are losing their father. And how could you just stand by? And he can't even say to her the truth about himself, which is that I'm losing my beloved. Like, I fell in love with this person. I found him, and we had this amazing relationship, and we saw each other, and we sharpened each other, and we brought each other a deep Torah. And I can't mourn, and I can't be by him, and I can't sit by him, and I can't tell anybody how I'm feeling. And you want me to pray for you? Pray for yourself. Like, God has verses for you. God has a paradigm for you. Tradition has a paradigm for you. You can be real, and I can't. And that just feels so heartbreaking that he's losing, and he can't be honest about it. And his sister, who theoretically should get him and should see him and should know what he's going through, doesn't see him at all. And so he is stuck.
So can I just thank you for that? Because you, with those comments, really changed. I always hated Rabbi Yochanan in this moment, and I always thought he was a grade A jerk. And instead, what your words made me realize is he's got a grade A broken heart, that he is shattered, not just because he's losing the love of his life, but he realized their relationship could never live and breathe. And now that Reish Lakish is dying, he can't even mourn him properly. And so he's not a jerk. He is utterly distraught and utterly forlorn. And there's no shiva, there's no minyan, there's no structure, there's no come in for Kabbalat Shabbat at the end of the Chadodi and we'll honor and uplift your sadness. It can't be seen. It didn't happen. It can't be seen. It can't be seen. It can't be seen. It can't be seen. It wasn't real. It wasn't real. It wasn't real. And it was really real. And that's what makes him act out in this way.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I think that the two of you made a beautiful Hollywood story. I don't see that here. I stand by my my view of this. It's not about being hidden. It's not about being anything. It's about being what I said before. So I don't believe that there is something that He's so sad that he cannot develop. Actually, historians can tell me if I'm wrong about this or not,
Right.
but in some centuries during the Middle Ages, it was common to be homosexual, and he was not punished.
Okay. So Elias.
So this
before-
idea that he was in the the
Right.
closet, hidden, the whole thing, I don't.
Okay, so
it's
Elias,
not
I'm
for
going
me.
to ask you to read the last part of the story.
No, I cannot
we don't.
read this
No,
stuff.
we don't need historians and what happens in some odd century. Let's just look on the page.
Where are
what
we?
happens? So, so Rabbi Yochanan grieved. We're on the first column of 84a3, about 6 lines up from the bottom. After Rish Lakish dies, Rabbi Yochanan grieved after him considerably. If you'll just finish the story.
That's
Elias.
Zambrul Adonai, 6 lines up from the bottom of the page on Friday nights, right?
But Rabbi Yochanan grieved.
Yochanan grieved him after considerably. The rabbi said, "Who shall go to bring comfort to his mind? Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas should go, for his scholarship is brilliant." Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas went and sat before him. To everything Rabbi Yochanan would say, Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas told him, "We learned a barasia that supports you." Eventually said to him, "You are supposed to be like Bar Lakisha." Reish Lakish, Bar Lakisha. With Bar Lakisha, whenever I would say something, he would pose 24 difficulties to me, and I would give him 24 solutions. And as a result of the give and take, the subject became clear. However, you constantly say, "We learned the barasia that supports you. Of what use is this? Do not I already know that I have said well?" Rabbi Yochanan would go about and tear his clothes, and would cry and say, "Where are you, Bar Lakisha? Where are you, Bar Lakisha?" And he would scream until his sanity wore away from him. The rabbis prayed for mercy on him, and Rabbi Yochanan passed away.
So, Elias, I take you very seriously. I really do take you very seriously. And your read is that Eliza and I are penning a Hollywood story, and all this deep emotion is our construct that we're putting on it. So I wanted to challenge you and push back. I mean, what do you think is happening here?
I don't know.
Can I jump
Michelle,
in?
you
Okay,
pull my
I'll
voice
jump in
because
for a
you and I
second.
are on the same
No,
page.
I'll jump in for a second because I really do very strongly want to maintain both reads. Like, we came into this class with a read that was desperately needed for generations, right? To affirm to people who are in non-heterosexual relationships that you can be seen is a modern move with this text that is so critically important to see. So I want to affirm that. But because we started there, we didn't give voice, or hopefully we've started to give voice to the other long-held understanding of this text, which is equally important. And I don't want for either of them to get lost. So Elias, to try to jump in on what might be here that's not about sexuality, and is rather about relationship. Rabbi Yochanan didn't, in his ego, in his pride, in his sense of righteousness. What you were a robber. Like I didn't say anything wrong. I didn't have an issue, and he held on to his pride in his anger, and so therefore, when Reish Lakish passes, he realizes that he actually we put it. Joni Mitchell put it beautifully, right? Don't it always seem to go, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And he doesn't know, he didn't get what a powerful, like Reish Lakish was a pain in his butt, 24 answers to every single time. That actually was something that perhaps he didn't know how to treasure and how to affirm. And now that he has a bunch of yes men around him, he realizes that he can't be the person that he could have been with somebody who was strong enough to challenge him.
Okay, so Michelle, I love you so much, and I respect you so much, but I don't get what's going on here. I don't get what's going on here. Just
How
at the
about
level,
guilt?
At the shot. Yeah. Can I just
Guilt.
say something? Hold on a second. The shot that we have to confront to unlock this story is that Rabbi Yochanan is so heartbroken about Rish Lakish's death and how it came about and the end of their ruptured relationship, that Rabbi Yochanan dies of heartbreak. And again, the pshat is he tears his clothes. That's rending, that's mourning, that's avelus.
And have you
Can I just
never
finish?
loved
And-
someone non-sexually that you would mourn and cry and weep? Like, does it have to? I love the view about sex. I think it's important. I think
you
it's critical.
can't-
But are you denying the idea that we could have close friendships that are so deep and so critical and so important that we would mourn them in a way that we would lose our sanity?
The level of despair that is occasioned to Rabbi Yochanan by Reish Lakish's death feels like it just comes from a deep, purple, complex, whirly-swirly place that's different than he was a great colleague of mine. There's loss when there's like in the Gan Chapel, there are all these rabbinical assembly proceedings where rabbis die. I mean, we have them up there like 5 feet from here, and where rabbis die, and where younger rabbis say, like I did with Rabbi Chill. Rabbi Chill was my mentor. Rabbi Chill was my teacher. Rabbi Chill was my hero. Okay? But I don't, and all that's true. I could never be who I am without Rabbi Chill. But when Rabbi Chill died, and I missed him, we missed him, we all missed him, we have a sanctuary name for him, right? I didn't tear my clothes and die of heartbreak. I thought to myself, how do I take Rabbi Chill's teachings and live them out in the next generation, right? I didn't say, if Rabbi Chill's dead, I can't be alive. I'm gonna go crazy. This is not that. And we have 1,000 examples in the Gan Chapel of rabbis who lose rabbis, of students who lose teachers, of disciples who lose mentors. And they mourn and they say they're amazing and they're wonderful and I will always hold them and I will love them. But they don't rend and die. They don't do that.
Why can't
There's
it
something.
both?
Let me just finish my thought. There's something else going on here. So, Michelle, do you not see that?
Oh,
Wait.
absolutely.
No,
Wait,
let
hold on.
me ask
Hold on.
Michelle, do
I
you not see that?
1,000% see that. And as I began, I actually think it's critically important that our children, that this generation be able to hear the read of this story as two gay or bisexual men who can't have the relationship they want, and that we read it that way, right? And I think it's also important because the Talmud and the Torah speak to everyone, that we not make the same mistake that our ancestors made when they said that this is only a heterosexual story,
Right.
that we say that this is only a homosexual story. Because I want all of our children, regardless of their sexual orientation, to learn that you can have friendships, that you can have relationships that are so deep and so profound that you are responsible for each other's souls.
Wes, can
All
I
of
say
our
something?
children.
Yeah.
Could it be both? Could it be both things, that he misses him because he really loved him in whatever way he loved him, gay or heterosexual, and he really misses him as a scholar at the same time? Can it be both? Are we open to have
I mean,
that in the discussion?
so that's a really good question, Elias. Is the pshat, is this story in its own context, is it only a gay love story? Is it only a heterosexual mentor-disciple story? Or is the pshat that it could be both? And obviously we have a multiplicity of views from my point of view. And there's no one right answer. From my point of view, the pshat is this is only a gay love story.
Can
It's
I
only a
say-
gay love story
I
because-
wanna-
and my answer, and read it, if you ask me, I'll tell you the answer, is you've got all this stuff wrapped in. You've got the sister who's the wife. They clearly have this connection that is spiritual and emotional and Torah-based and also physical. All the stuff about phallic symbols and when do they become tameh and the guilt that they have, that's not by accident. That's not by accident that of all the Mishnayot, they talk about phallic symbols and when they become tameh. And you can't, I've loved mentors and I've lost mentors and I didn't tear my clothes and die.
Can
There's
I
something else
Can I
going
give you
on
an
here.
example? All right. So everybody, I want to tell a story. So I when I was in my late teens, I started working in a German Jewish synagogue in Buenos Aires, and at the time I met a friend of mine who became a friend of mine who was the organist, the accompanist of the and immediately same age, we almost this has been 30 years. We grew up together, and we have, first of all, we have a fantastic relationship. We are very close and very tight. We are very spiritual connected because we both love life in synagogue and we work in synagogue, very deeply connected. During this past summer, he was sick with coronavirus and he was 6 weeks in the hospital. 6 weeks in the hospital. I couldn't sleep at night of the thought of losing my dear friend. And that's deep love that I feel for him. And I will be completely heartbroken if something happens to him.
Mm.
And that doesn't make us gay.
Well said. Let me ask you this question to close, because we're out of time. What is the point of this story, and why did the rabbis include it in the Talmud? Let's just do a quick wraparound. Elisa, and then we'll go around.
I think that a point of the story is the importance of speaking one's truth and sharing one's heart, and doing so in a time when you can.
I think that, Alisa and I like opera very much. I see this as an opera. Fabulous, very dramatic, with the people dying at the end. It's fantastic. Or Puccini one. I think that regardless of the relationship between the two of them, sexual relationship, and I see both of your points about being a gay relationship, and I'm completely fine with that. I think that, to me, the point of the story is about how close love and hate could be, how close it could be, and what a relationship that, the love, and when the other one doesn't respond with the love or in the same way that we think about it, how much passion in a wrong way that could develop.
Yeah, I just see this as a love story. That Torah is about love and relationship, and when the relationship is broken, it breaks Torah as well.
Beautiful, Dan.
Lord.
Beautiful. Well, in honor of Reish Lakish and his 24 solutions, I'll give 3. I'll give 3. I think the first really is about accepting each other, working past holding somebody in a particular moment, in a particular time, in a particular way, and being able to see them as they wish to be seen. That's the first. The second, I think, is about trying to not get stuck in our heart in places of anger and in places of righteous indignation, but needing to work past that moment and not make the mistake that Rabbi Yochanan made. And the third, and I think probably most important, is the capacity to appreciate those who fill our lives with deep and meaningful relationships while they're here. And while we can say to them, like, thank you for bringing me 24 solutions, it's such a blessing to share this relationship in this world with you.
So, in the spirit of Elazar ben Pedas, who just said you spoke very well, I want to say you all spoke very well. You spoke well. I want to come back to my orienting frame, though, which is from Micha Goodman, about the way in which the unspoken, the unsaid, there's so much that's happening below the surface. There's like the surface and below the surface. Like, they're in the water, but why are they in the water? He can't get as close. Why can't he get as close? They're talking about, different instruments and when they contract tumor. Why don't they contract tumor? The sister says, pray for him. Well, why don't you pray for him? All this stuff is below the surface. And here's my read, and all of what you said is true. Here's my main takeaway, and to ground it in month 13 of the pandemic. This story is about heartbreak to me. Because in the end, the 3 protagonists are all heartbroken. Reish Lakish dies of heartbreak. Rabbi Yochanan dies of heartbreak. And Mrs. Reish Lakish loses her husband and loses her brother at the same time, right? So dead rabbi, and a widowed wife, and a sister without a brother, okay? And that's the end. And one could read it as an opera and a lot of intensity. To me, the message that this has is when we're living in a world of heartbreak. I mean, everybody's got heartbreak. Everybody's got heartache and everybody's got heartbreak. And to me, what this story says is go to the heart of the heartbreak. go to the heart, what's at the heart of the heartbreak, and deal with what's at the heart of the heartbreak. It feels to me like what doesn't happen in this story is they can never get to the heart of the heartbreak. There's so much going on that's unsaid. They never can get to the heart of the heartbreak. And I think if there's any message here, is if you don't deal with the heart of the heartbreak, your hearts will really be broken. And if there's any hope to save your broken heart, it's deal with what's at the heart of your heart. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Thank you.